Hello and welcome to Monday's episode of a Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, Craig Fowler, and joining me on this occasion to talk through the 3 out of 6 Scottish Premiership matches that managed to survive the dreadful weather conditions that we've had in this past weekend is Euan Taylor.
Hello, Craigs.
And Craig Anderson.
Hello, Euan and Craig.
Right, guys, let's
and all the listeners. Sorry to interrupt, but I shouldn't just say hello to the two of you. It's important to say hello to the people that are.
Was that really worth interrupting me to say hello to the listeners?
It wasn't, Craig, but I've got main character syndrome.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
You've thrown our host off. Anyway, Craig, carry on.
Anyway, yes, let's begin with this is probably going to be a shorter podcast, so we're going to just go deep depth. Let's go to deep depth on all these teams, and let's see if we can still wring out roughly 40 minutes. I'm not sure if that's going to be possible, but we have said this before many times and still ended up doing it over an hour, so you never know when it comes to the Terrace podcast. But we shall begin with the match at Ibrox this past weekend. Rangers defeating Hibs by 4-0 in the first match for the new Rangers manager. Euan, there's plenty of Hibs to talk about after this game and Nick Montgomery's comments. But let's start with your boys. What did you see? What did you see different? Was there really anything different, or was this just because Michael Beale could still beat Hibs 4-0, especially in the lineup in a kamikaze formation? But was there anything you saw that was kind of changed under the new boss?
Well, I mean, as you say, it's kind of hard to work out. I mean, this is, as a Rangers fan, this is probably my favourite type of like battering another team in Scottish football when they sort of think they've got a chance. And then and then they come and they have a go, and they just they just get absolutely sparked out. So it's kind of I did say before the game that I thought it's probably an ideal game for Clement, because it'll probably be a bit like a Belgian football game where the teams have a go. Because I did feel that Hibs would probably pitch up and play in the same way they have been, and obviously they did do that, which we'll go on to. In terms of Rangers' approach, I mean, we were probably a bit more forward thinking, a bit less ponderous, but probably there's a fair way to go in that regard. I think probably the biggest difference was scoring early, to be honest. I didn't think there was that much in the game up until Rangers took the lead through Abdallah Sima, continue his good form, and after that, that could happen. That could have happened under Beale. To be honest, it's just the players will play with more confidence if the crowd aren't on their backs after 20 minutes and it's 0-0. So yeah, it was definitely a better performance. Than recent Rangers performances. Probably the best we've played this season. I don't know how much. I mean, I think Clement would probably say himself it's probably not that much down to him coming in. He's just not had enough time to make a massive difference yet. But the personnel he picked was probably along the same lines that Beale would have picked, or even Davis and Alex Rae, the dream team beforehand, would have picked. So I don't think I don't think there's that much to put down to the new managerial mastermind that we've got in. Albeit, obviously it's much better to start with a 4-0 win over Hibs than it would have been like a 2-0 defeat or something. So positive signs, and definitely I think we will be pressing higher up the park than has been the case previously, and you can see the start of that. But the question is whether Rangers are fit enough to do that, and we'll maybe see whether I think it does suit the forward players, to be honest. But they might need to be a bit fitter than they've looked so far, because I think they are all to lesser and greater extents actually quite adept at pressing, and maybe not as adept at other things like scoring from 6 yards out and pretty much open goal. Sam Lammers again, but yeah, apart from that, he did. I suppose Sam Lammers got an assist, which it was tackling a guy in a sort of borderline foul to pass a boy that was 30 yards out, and then he just slams it in. So it's not the most cutting of assists for Lammers, but I suppose he got a number. So I think that is what the forwards, if they're good at anything, it's probably that. So we should probably base our game around that, as whether the rest of the team, particularly the defence, is quick enough to play a really high line that might require, remains to be seen. But yeah, certainly a promising start, and I think over the next few weeks, obviously, we'll get a bit more of an idea of how Clement's ideas actually mesh with the squad that we've got at the moment.
When a manager comes into a new club, something that you always kind of highlight is players that are going to have. Often it's talking about players having second chances, but it could also be just players finding a new lease of life, having the ability to just kind of draw a line in the sand of what's happened before and start afresh. And Craig Anderson, Cyril Dessers. I mean, it still was it the best of performances that I've seen, but he did take his goal very well, didn't he?
Well, I knew where you were. I knew where you were going when you were saying that, because you were. It was very much more of the same in many ways. But he did score. But as Euan pointed out, he has already scored. It's not his first goal, but he does seem to need about 300 chances per goal. And although it still led to the third goal, that piece of play in the lead up to Sima's second goal was quite astonishing. In the way that he shimmied past the goalkeeper, maybe more by luck than ability, and then had like a first really bad touch, and then his second shot, fair enough, it's blocked, but it was like
his first shot. Did he not shoot it off himself?
It was on foot. That's what I thought. Like, yeah, it was. And obviously Sima then puts it in, but it was a nice finish. But as with I think all four goals, aided and abetted by David Marshall, looking very, very unable to get down like that. You mentioned, Euan mentioned like Lammers getting an assist on the opening goal, but I think the second goal for Raskin. I actually think Marshall got the bigger assist for that, because I've never seen. I don't think I've ever seen like a actual real goalkeeper taking so long to get down to a shot. Like unless they're injured. It reminds me of the when Kelly won the league against Arbroath and Derek Gaston had like properly injured himself, and then the winning goal, it was just like he just didn't have it in him to go towards even trying to save it. And there was a little bit of that aspect to it. I didn't personally think it was a foul either. I thought Lammers was a fine tackle, but yeah. But from Desser's point of view, he gets the goal. Sometimes they always say, "All you need is one to go in off your arse." That was better than one going in off his arse, in the sense that there was a degree of competence and a degree of composure about how he put it away. But we'll see. I think I remain to be convinced whether this is going to open the floodgates when it comes to his goal scoring.
I'm telling you, buy stocks in Cyril Dessers right now, because the only way is up.
Because it'll cost a penny each.
So I'm refusing to get off the Dessers train, because I thought he was going to be good, and it was fair to say he's not been so far. But I think his career's been really quite good up until now. So it didn't make sense to me that he would just be as bad as he's been. So there has to be something else, and I do wonder. Sometimes I think I always remember the when Fernando Morientes signed for Liverpool back in the day, and it was obviously looked like a good signing. He'd been part of Real Madrid teams that had been very successful. Went to Monaco on loan and did really well. Got them, I think, to the final of the Champions League that season. But his whole career was based around basically being more physical than the defenders he was up against. But that was in Spain and in France, because he was a big lad, and he came to England and he just couldn't do it, because the English defenders were so much stronger than he was used to, and it's like his sort of big USP almost as a player didn't work. And I do think sometimes when physical strikers come to Scotland, as Dessers has been through his whole career, they do struggle to adapt a bit to how physical the defenders are here. And that would probably be the case, if he was playing in England as well. So yeah, I do wonder if it's a bit of that. I mean, Giakoumakis that's the example that I'm sort of clinging to a wee bit, because remember, Giakoumakis was rotten for Celtic when he first joined. I know he was injured as well, but he also didn't look fit when he was meant to be fit. He had that game against Livingston where he missed a penalty and Celtic drew 0-0, which was Dessers hadn't had quite a sort of catastrophic game as that yet. Might be in the post, but it's not happened yet. So I'm clinging to the fact, and they've not had massively dissimilar careers. Giakoumakis and Desser's both been top scorer in Holland previously, so I'm sort of clinging to that. In that, it did take probably Giakoumakis until the second half of the season to look good for Celtic, and then he looked very good up until basically until he left. So I'm hoping that is the case with Dessers, albeit I appreciate he has been Humpty so far.
Well, the bright spark of the Rangers forward line, the brand new Rangers forward line that was brought in this year, was Abdullah Sima.
And everyone said he was pitched to begin with as well, and he's used it. So I refused to accept that was the case, and he's at least come good.
Well, he had a great game on Saturday, not just his 2 goals, but and this segues nicely into the way that Hibs kind of lined up for this game and their tactics and their kind of gung-ho approach, because putting Sima 1-on-1 with Lewis Miller as often as he was able to get there. Oh man, did that man feast or did he not feast?
Yeah, he's a difficult player to deal with because he's so direct and he's really, really, really quicker than I think we're used to having players in Scotland, and he obviously got the confidence to finish at the moment, and it's Miller just couldn't cope. But again, Lewis Miller's probably a player that relies quite a lot on his physicality in terms of defending because he's a big lad and he's quick, but he was up against a guy who's bigger than him and quicker than him, and he just
Lewis Miller's not actually quick. He looks like he should be quick, but he's not. He's very athletic, but he doesn't have a lot of pace.
And just Seema was just burned him, especially on the first goal. I thought that was a great finish. Albeit again, with Marshall, the amount of goals that Marshall conceded that reminded me of watching Alan McGregor in the last few seasons. I mean, that's every time I watch Marshall now. To be honest, it is. You can just see it. It's obviously a once good goalkeeper that is no longer. And I felt that Seema finish for the first goal reminded me of like the Cholak goal that he scored for Malmo against Rangers, one of the Martin Boyle goals in that the semi-final in the League Cup. Quite similar finishes. They're really good finishes. They're right in the side netting, but at the same time, you sort of think a goalkeeper might get his angles right and sort of stop that because it's a difficult finish to pull off. And obviously the second goal is just, you could throw a hat on that. And the probably the worst Marshall moment was when he just sclaffed it straight to John Lundstrom, who then I think the finish was worse than the mistake.
I was
completely embarrassing.
When I watched it, it's like one of those passages of play that like some English chump that supports like Burton Albion would post as like evidence of how straight our game is.
Yes, you'd struggle to disagree with that.
Despite them both being like like both of them played in their Premier League previously.
Yes, I can't believe Lundstrom did that. Played in the Premier League, not missed the chance. I can perfectly believe he did that. But yeah, so it's. I was actually one of the guys on our Discord. It's Finlay, I believe. It said Hibs' approach in general reminded him of Aberdeen last season when it was one of Van Bronckhorst's last games when Rangers were obviously had a bit of turmoil at the time. Aberdeen were going pretty well, and they turned up at Ibrox and went for it, and Rangers won 4-1. Is pretty much the only good Rangers performance in months either side of it, to be honest, at the time. And that it was. I think Montgomery's good, especially because of how good Hibs could be on the counter attack. I don't understand why you would set up the way they set up.
I think it's one of those lessons to people that say, "Oh, why do we not just go after them?" It's like they might be shit relative to how good Rangers can or have been at times over the last few years, like 1.5 years out of the last few years. But they are still better than you, and there's a reason that they still finish second and will finish second in the league and did finish second in the league last season. Like they are still better than you. So there are very limited circumstances after which you can ever really go after them and playing the way Hibs did. It was basically playing into Rangers' hands, and the best way to beat this Rangers team is what's been shown by the teams that have beaten them already, which is to sit and let them frustrate themselves and then find a goal.
Exactly.
It's kind of, it's not that, but it's kind of even what Celtic did. Like Celtic didn't go fully after them in the win. Like they obviously had more of the game than you'd expect Kelly or whoever to have, but it was I think it was a wee bit of a lesson in that respect. Montgomery probably he's never managed in an unequal league before, if you know what I mean. Like the Mariners that he managed in, they're one of the less resource teams in Australia certainly, but like so if they're up against a Sydney or a Melbourne City or a Melbourne Victory or whatever, they've probably got a bit less, but it's not to the extent that in the leagues that he played in was more or less the same, and he was playing most of his career English Championship or Division 1 as it's been called. It was the same. He didn't spend a lot of his time coming up against teams that were like vastly better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you saw yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, I think he will just have to, and obviously everything he said after the game is the opposite of saying basically, if you read it at face value, is like I'm refusing to learn as Nick Montgomery. But I suspect that was a bit of bluster, and he will be thinking actually next time. Because is it next week they're playing Celtic?
Yes.
Easter Road, yeah. So, yeah, if he goes 4-4 again, I mean, just and the thing is,
it's not just like going with these two. It's not just setting up with the 4-4-2, and because everything about it is what you think it was for those unaware. Like it was a proper like it didn't change anything from what he's been playing since he's been Hibs manager so far. It changed nothing whatsoever. It wasn't just like they're playing Boyle and Euan on the wings, and they're playing two up front, but they're sitting deep, and Boyle and Euan are really protecting the fullbacks, and the forwards are kind of splitting out and covering fullbacks and stuff that you could do in a 4-4-2 when you've kind of got two wingers and two forwards and still be set up kind of defensively, or at least some sort of solidity against a team that's just obviously going to be better than you away from home. But they gave them no protection. Their fullbacks were left one-on-one constantly all game. That was why Seaman just continually ripped Miller apart. No help whatsoever. They were bombing on something rotten as well. Jordan Abita, the amount of times he was appearing deep in the Rangers half, which is we've yet to see any real evidence if that's a good thing as well, I would say, so far since he's been signed. And also as well, just like you're given no protection at all, whether it's out wide or whether it's through the middle, to a defensive four that needs a lot of protection. And I think you can get away with games with other teams because you can outscore them, but you're not going to do that to Rangers at Ibrox, or you're going to find yourselves very fortunate in order to do it. And even like little things as well, like doing because of their by kicks, the ones that's like constantly passing out for the back. And again, I know why they're doing it, but because it draws the other team in, and if they can pass it round it, then with the speed of the guys they have in the attack, all four of them that started on Saturday have got a certain degree of quickness to them. Then it makes sense to build your attack that way. That's the kind of that's why I think I'm generally not too hard on that side of it. Whereas other people would be like, why? What are you doing, especially at Ibrox, when they're going to be very good at closing you down and getting the ball off you? But just like Rangers would have an attack, it would go out for a goal kick, and you're thinking, right, take the sting out of it a little bit. Just David Marshall, go do the whole thing when you go to the other end and you kick the post, and you take about 40 minutes, and you're already a goal down or maybe even 2 goals down, but you're giving your players a chance. It's going to be difficult to do that much running, and you don't want to immediately just keep the game going and keep the game frantic, because that's going to suit the team that's better. There was just so many things about the performance that really make an awful lot of sense to people who are probably more familiar with Scottish football than Nick Montgomery is.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, had an absolutely horrendous performance. Jimmy Jago.
Yes,
he is rotten. I mean, we know that he can't really play football, and but we know at the same time there's probably reasons that he has to be in the team at times. But I think it's probably just it's a reason why long term I don't think this formation will work for Hibs, because I don't think in Scottish football you can get midfielders good enough to play as a 2 in midfield anymore. Really, I think that's really difficult to find somebody all round good enough that won't. Because Jago's probably okay-ish in a 3 if he's got like 2 other footballers beside him, but and basically him and Joe Neal, and Neal maybe has most of the attributes he would look for other than like an all-round centre mid. I'm not as big on him as some other people are, as in Tony. But
I like Joe Newell, but he can't. He's not a good defender.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Having him in a 2 is a problem for that reason alone.
Yeah. And when Levitt came on, like you instantly played like a really good like 60-yard pass, but you couldn't play him in a 2 either because he really can't defend. He really can't defend. So, and I don't think you're going to find that there isn't, like, I mean, for that kind of formation, you're looking for like a Giameni, for example. Like, that's the sort of midfielder that you need. Like, you need a proper all round, good at absolutely everything, and you 2 of them. And you're just not going to even you obviously scale that down to like Scottish football standard. I think you would, like, Celtic would struggle if it was like, if they just played like Hatate and McGregor, for example. They're good at everything, but if you just played the 2 of them, I think, and 2 wingers and 2 strikers, I think Celtic would lose more games than they lose by playing 3. So it's I just think it's a real struggle to find players that will be able to do that, and ultimately it's. I mean, I don't think it's a bad formation for them to have in their locker. And say if it'd been Rangers had been 1-0 up going into the last 10 minutes or last 15 minutes, they could have switched to the sort of 4-2-4 and gone for it at that stage, and then what have you got to lose? But to start with it and you just keep it throughout the whole game, I thought it was baffling.
Okay, it's about time to go to our second match, and that took place at Rugby Park on Saturday, as the hosts managed to do something for the first time that they haven't done since July, it must be, and that's defeat a team that is not named either Celtic or Rangers, and that's Killie beating Livingston by 3-1. Killie opened the scoring, but Livingston came back before Killie took the lead again before half-time, but that even was quite generous, probably, on the visitors to equalise and to be within a goal at half-time, because I only watched the first 60 minutes of this, basically until it went 3-1. But to me, Craig, it looked like a thoroughly dominant performance from your boys.
Yeah, it was much needed for Killie, and it was a good performance. It was the result was much more important than the performance for Killie in terms of the way the season had been going, and just like not, like, as I say, we hadn't won a league game since the opening day, so like just getting a win. But the fact that they both came in tandem was a really good thing, and aided and abetted by an absolutely dreadful Livingston performance. I think because Livingston haven't lost a lot of games this season, but I think the problem they had in this game is that they came up against a team whose strengths lie in very similar places to where theirs do, but who also have better players. So it's probably potentially the worst opponent they could have got. And Martindale said after the game that they were bullied, and to an extent they were physically matched by Killie, but also they were outplayed as well. Killie had a lot of the ball and used it well and created a hell of a lot of chances. Not like glaring chances, but like openings constantly. And it was one of those where when they got that penalty, which a really daft challenge, obviously started to worry about more of the same from the season. But the fact we got the goal just before half time probably made it a comfortable afternoon. In the second half performance from Livingston, I don't think I've seen as bad a 45 minutes from a team anywhere at this level in a very long time. They were hopeless in the second half.
Yeah, we'll get on to talking about Livy a bit more, but let's focus on Killie for the meantime. Kyle Vassell, I mean, he got 2 goals, but even without his 2 goals, I thought he was tremendous. It was. I was trying to think what he reminds me of, and this is weird because I've used this before, but I've used it to describe defenders who aren't very good, because it's something that I think they call defenders in basketball. If they're not good, they call them a turnstile. You can just go through them. Kyle Vassell is a turnstile for up front. But what I mean is, like, it comes up to him, like the play comes up to him. It slows because he's not the quickest of men, but it still funnels through him. He manages, by hook or by crook, whatever he does, whether he even sometimes without even touching the ball, he just got that manhandling ability over his opposing defender that it just seems that, so whatever way he does it, the ball goes up to him, and then it'll slow for a bit, and then it'll just keep going. The move will keep going through.
Yeah,
it's a turnstile in a good way.
I mean, I'm glad you clarified that for us, Craig. To be honest, but I do see what you mean. And at least it's not the Hampden turnstiles, or the ball would be with him for like 45 minutes before it went anywhere. But
I suppose it's not modern turnstiles where there's somebody trying their
e-tickets.
best to get a QR code against them.
He is a phenomenal physical specimen in particular, and apart from all the injuries are because of that as well. It's like his body is a shape that I don't think humans should really have a body in many ways, but he is so box office to watch because he's a very physical, very aggressive player, but he's got a really good touch as well. And you saw that wee bit of kind of creativity with the setup for the opening goal when he kind of holds the ball up, as you say, for so long. Because it's funny watching it back. And Dab, you see him getting the ball into his feet, and Ndaba's not even started his run, and Vassell's already got the ball. But as you say, he holds it up and he slows it down for so long that Ndaba's able to make the overlap, and it's a nice back heel. And then he gets the 2 goals himself. He certainly could have had more as well. He is central to absolutely everything. And I know when I said this before, when we spoke, Craig, about when he got the new contract last year, I was unconvinced at that point, but more or less ever since he signed that deal, he's been an absolute standout and very much captain material as well. He's a really good captain, I think, and he does a lot of that stuff. And it was a definite. There were lots of good performances for Kelly yesterday, but he won the sponsors man of the match, and unsurprisingly so, because he was a colossus in that game. But as I say, all round, I mentioned Ndaba. Getting him back, I think the start of the season, the first few games, he was a real find, and he really stood out. And then got that injury, but having a natural, it's weird that I think Ipswich fans keep saying, "Oh no, he's been playing left back, but he's actually a centre half." That boy's not a centre half. That he's too good to be a centre half. Like, he's too good with the ball, and he's too good at running and all the rest of it. Like, Stuart Findlay's a centre half. Like, Stuart Findlay is shit on the ball, but Ndaba's like so confident, like strutting into midfield and getting into attacking positions. He made a big difference. And then Lewis Mayo is the opposite of any other centre half you ever see, in that he's like so calm on the ball. He's a Jack Hendry of the defence, if you want to put it that way. He had a really good game, and the difference, I think, from previous performances with Liam Polworth in a game like this where it was frantic, he was the guy that calmed it down and put his foot on the ball. And I'm not the biggest fan of Liam Polworth, but in a game like that, he offered exactly what was needed, because even in situations where he would have the ball kind of maybe on his own touchline, and most players are just lashing it, but he's just like taking a second to wait until basically drawing their player, and then clap a ball around the side of him, and all these things that when everyone else is running about, he seemed to be watching the game at a different speed. So there was just so much to like about the performance on the whole. But I am just in the same way that I've not been getting too down on some of the defeats, because I think the draws more than defeats. We've drawn more than we've been losing, where I think there's enough evidence that the team is clicking. I'm not going to put too much stock in this win, because I do think Livingston were very bad.
Yeah, we could may as well go to them now. Actually, before we do, just to wind it back slightly, one question I had to ask, because you talked about 2 members of the back 3 there. Having returned to the back 3, I was surprised to see it was Robbie Dees that was on the bench.
Yeah, so it seems to be. It's always going to be a hard one there, because I think Stuart Findlay wasn't a player that Derek McInnes was expecting to have this season. I feel like he signed this team. He had the team in his mind, with Dees as the kind of centre half there, and then the opportunity to sign Findlay comes up, and he's like, "You obviously take it," and he's been good, and I think he had a good game again. Joe Wright's the one that obviously of the others is maybe less obviously good, but I would say it's always hard to tell how he played, but Wright was more of a right back in this game, I would say. Certainly it was much less of a back 3 than it's always in between the two, but he definitely did that, and I thought Wright had a really good game. And the thing that Wright offers you is the fact that he's right-sided, and unlike Mayo, who is right-sided and can play full-back and all the rest of it, Mayo is not physically as adept, so dealing with like Newbley, who spent a bit of time out there, Wright did really well in that position, as he did last season against Livingston in the first game, but he also scored twice in that game. So I think Dees, it's a funny situation because he's been the standout, or was the standout at the start of the season, but I think he may find it a wee bit hard to get back in for the next wee while, until someone does badly, to be honest. And I mean, so be it. I think he's still adapting. He's still his first season at the top flight and all that, so it won't do him any harm if he's maybe only playing 30 games or 25 games. That'll be okay as long as he's still playing.
Euan, Joel Newbley, could he be dropped, or do Livingston just have that little in attack that it's hard to drop him even when he's playing consistently as badly as he is at the moment?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if Livingston do have some forward players that have like flashes of like not just him. So obviously you got Bruce Anderson, who's consistent enough. Sangari, I like. You could argue whether he's gonna, what sort of, does he come from midfield or start? Sort of. I mean, I think he could probably do a bit of the Newbley role. I mean, Guthrie, I don't rate at all. So, and you do know that Newbley eventually he probably will do something, the other forwards aren't capable of. But it's a shame that I think it does look like his sort of Livingston career is going to sort of peter out.
We were chatting. Sorry.
No, you.
We were chatting about this yesterday, and the fact that like the decline in his performances is like playing into the hands of him ending up at like Kelly or someone of our level rather than like some of the, it was a bit like when Eamon Brophy, like when he bust through and you're like, oh, he's going to get a big move, and then he ended up signing for St Mirren, and no harm to St Mirren, and they were paying him more than we were at the time, but it could be one of those situations. And it was funny because I don't know what you thought, Craig, when Joel Newbley is on the pitch, sometimes it turns into the Joel Newbley show in the terms of how everyone tries to play the game. Because you could see, and it probably helped us that we've seen him more than most, I guess, of the Championship as well. We were like defending very specifically to counter Joel Newbley. Like it was like when the ball went to him, we were actually letting it bounce first. Like we weren't even challenging him, and then it was only once he got on the ball that we were kind of going towards him. And there were a couple of times, as bad as I agree with you, didn't play well. We just crowded him a wee bit, but he found like a really nice like through ball and completely opened up the game, because we had like the vortex that was Joel Newbley had sucked everyone towards them, and Livingston didn't capitalise on those. But I feel like in a different world, because I think one of them was just before we scored the opening goal. In a different world, one of those chances goes in, and it's like, oh, look at the impact that Newbley's had here, and it's a funny player, and it's weird to see him. I feel like he's being restricted now, because I think he used to be a wee bit of a secret weapon, and now he's like the game plan, and I think that doesn't help him.
I would love to see him as like like an additional element to a team rather than being the team, which it does feel like a lot of the time he is at Livingston. So, but yeah, you don't know whether you'll get the kind of move where that actually is going to be the case, or if you'll end up at a team that he's sort of the main man at again. But yeah, I obviously it's not going to plan, because the plan was for him not to be at Livingston this season, clearly. But he's there. I can't see him moving in January. So unless a team, I don't know, like a Ross County or something, maybe you could see maybe they would chuck some money at Livingston, possibly. But whether Livingston would sell if they're sort of maybe in a bit of a relegation scrap with a team like Ross County or whoever. But yeah, I would say it looks like you'll leave on a free at the end of the season. And yeah, the level he goes to, as you say, he could well be turning up at Killie next season. Who knows?
Before we move on, just something I noticed in kind of researching this. So I watched the game, and I remember a couple of times. There's one in particular at Marley Watkins. I think he ended up having the shot himself, but he won the initial header over Mikey Devlin. And I was like, that kind of sums this game up so far, that Marley Watkins is winning headers over Mikey Devlin. And then after watching the first 60 minutes, I just went on the Pie and Bovril forum to see what Livingston fans were thinking about the game. And there was one that's a few kind of pointed out that their defence just isn't as strong with Io Obilai in there, and that makes a lot of sense. He's been quite solid for Livingston ever since the They signed him from Queen of the South, I think before the start of the 21-22 season. And then it was saying, somebody said, I like Mickey Devlin, but he doesn't really win many headers. And I was like, hang on a minute, that doesn't sound like Mickey Devlin. So I went and checked his stats on Y-Scout. I think he's got a problem. I think he's got a problem due to the injuries. I don't think he can head the ball anymore, or he can't get off the ground, because his career average for heading the ball is 68% he wins of aerial duels. This season, he's at 51. And last season, with a very small sample size, this season isn't a big sample size either, but last season, an even smaller sample size, he was at 49.
How big was it? Did he not just play one game last season, or did he play for Aberdeen before January?
That was including playing 4 or 5 games for, I think it was Fleetwood. He was at.
I was like, where was he? Oh yeah, Scott Brown signed him. I was like, he played like 3 minutes for Hibs.
I thought it was 1 minute up front. Yeah. So I was like, maybe he was up for 2 headers at that time. Fair play.
He only had like 2 90 minutes. I think he played like 6 games across the season, and he had like 2 90 minutes.
Mikey Devlin was atrocious yesterday from start to finish. Like, not like in the air, yes, he got bullied a bit, and Watkins. I mean, Watkins is an absolute pest, so he will win headers against anyone because he just is like quite smart and knows where to put his body. But he was the one who immediately after Kelly scored, like, got caught in possession as well, and then he was the one that it wasn't a red card, but he had the aerial challenge on Watson, and then he definitely catches Watson with his arm, and you see as he goes down, he's like in Watson's face, like it's
that
like,
was ridiculous.
It was very strange, which was actually an interesting incident because I was watching, like they had a bit of a stop for a VAR check for a while, and I don't really know what for because I think the challenge clearly wasn't a red, so I don't know if it was maybe for something in retaliation. But I was watching the ref quite closely, and it looked like he was like about to point to go to the screen and then changed his mind, and it was almost like they went, no, actually there's nothing, and I don't think there was anything unless there's something we missed. So it was just a bit weird, that incident in the whole. And just on that, like, I don't know if they were worried about a high profile VAR incident missing something so soon after like the Scotland game and stuff, because all 3 of Kelly's goals, I'm quite a pessimist when it comes to VAR, and if there's any minor thought of an infringement in the lead up to a goal, I'll kind of have it hanging over me about, should I be celebrating this, or are we going to not? All 3 of those goals, I was immediately like, yeah, this is fine, there's absolutely no way there's possibly anything. And yet every single one of them, he had to delay the kickoff, like even with the celebrations and the players coming back and all the rest of it. And I have no idea for any of the 3 goals what they could possibly have been looking at, to be quite honest, but he had to properly delay it. And I don't know if that was unusual, I would say, even by VAR. Like, mostly the checks are done by the time the players are ready to kick off, but all 3 goals, I don't know if it felt odd. There was something almost like they were just being absolutely sure on these. But anyway, that's not a comment in the game, but it was just Mikey Devlin was bad. Louis De Lucas, not as bad, but also very bad. He is a very strange player. He looks like he's got his feet on the wrong way whenever he tries to kick the ball as well. Like, he shanked 3 or 4 clearances out the park. I think it was him. It was someone for life. I think it was him. Had a shot from the edge of the box that went out between the 2 stands, like in the corner, as well, which was quite impressive. But Livingston, for a team that I wasn't quite singing their praises the last time we were on, but I was saying, they seem to be back towards the old Livingston in terms of like the way they're playing. It's just rotten. The fans didn't seem happy either when Bruce Anderson got taken off. There was a lot of boos from I think it was for him going off from the away end as well. Which, considering that, like, as we know with Livingston, it's not that big a crowd that they bring, and it wasn't at the weekend. For the boos to be quite so loud from that number of fans suggests it was quite a unanimous opinion.
Right, we should move on because we've done 36 minutes on 2 games, so that's a certain time, isn't it?
Yes, you got to fill the time, so why not?
It's like pouring water into a bottle. Like, the amount of the water will spread out as wide as you make the bottle.
Indeed.
That's a fucking terrible. There's something like that. There's a thing about that, but it's.
Can I move on to the game now? Right, Hearts 1, Celtic 4. And thank you very much for joining us on this week's episode of The Terrace. No, Right, okay, because I've got because I'm a bit surprised when I saw this, but I've seen some Celtic fans saying it as well. I don't know, it depends on maybe the way in which you're watching the game. I was obviously watching this from a Hearts perspective, but I did see people in the group chat saying this was maybe Celtic's best performance of the season, and there were Celtic fans on the Celtic forum, Kerrydale Street, saying it was probably their best performance since they gubbed us in the Scottish Cup back in March, I believe that would have been. So, for those who are not Hearts fans, who are watching this through well, neutral's maybe a bit of a stretch, especially for Euan. But unless kind of maroon tinted specs, was this Celtic's best performance of the season?
Yes. Yeah, it was definitely the best I've seen them anyway. And I would say I've seen probably most Celtic games this season.
Of course you have.
Yeah, of course, absolutely have. And yeah, they haven't looked as fluid as that to me. They haven't looked sort of generally as all round solid. I think it's just the all round best performance. I've not been particularly impressed with Celtic this season, but today was impressive. So I'm not sure anything that Hearts would have done would have worked. Albeit it's unlikely that what they tried was going to work. But yeah, they were good. I think Matt O'Reilly again. I mean, he's been the best player in the country this season. Continued in that vein. Luis Palma. I'm not 100% sold on him yet, but he definitely has. He's quite different from what they have. So that's particularly he's almost the complete opposite from Maida in so many ways. Like he's all sort of he's very good at kicking the ball. And he's not that good at running, whereas Maida's probably the other way around. So that kind of works, and there's also a lovely pass for O'Reilly's goal, and even better finish. So yeah, that's as good as Celtic have been, if that is any solace, Craig.
Not really. I mean, it feels like Matt O'Reilly right now is so very clearly the player of the year. It's like how many? It's at that point now where like how many weeks would he have to put in 5 out of 10 performances before he's no longer the front runner for player of the year? It feels like already like we'd have to get to January before people go, oh wait, actually maybe he's not, maybe it's somebody else. He's just so clearly out in front as being the best player in Scottish football so far this season.
Yeah, he's been man of the match pretty much every game he's played.
Yeah, and Palma was the other one I was going to bring on as well. Yeah, the kind of. Yeah, I've said it before. He does it. He's a very different type of player in terms of Scott Sinclair in that first Brendan Rodgers team, because Sinclair was a lot more about power and pace, and he was just bloody terrifying. Palma's not quite got that. He doesn't impose himself physically on a game in the same way that Sinclair was able to. But he is just somebody that just seems kind of. He's that directness, the right footer on the left of the front three, the guy who's just going to be there about getting goals and getting assists, and in the Scottish top flight is probably going to average out getting one of the two every 2 games between now and the end of the season. So
yeah,
seems like a decent purchase for them. Okay, can I start moaning about Hearts now?
Yeah, we're giving Celtic enough time. Go for it.
Yeah. Because, it might have been Celtic's best performance this season. They really weren't fucking going up against much, by the way. Hearts were... Like, so many... That's right, there's so much here. Where to start? Right, let's start with some terrible, terrible individual performances. Callum Nieuwenhof in the centre of the park. Abysmal. Absolute shocker. Why he didn't match O'Reilly's run from the 3rd minute in to... stop Celtic opening the scoring so early beats me, but that could have set the tone for his entire performance. He was completely all over the place. I think in recent matches he's actually started to come on in a game, and I've quite liked him, liked the look of him. He was one of the better players against Killie. He was Hearts' best player against Ross County. There was a couple of moments in the derby where he gave up possession a little too easily in dangerous areas. But otherwise, I was quite impressed with him. I like the way he can recycle possession quite quickly and effectively. And if you're wanting to move the ball between defence and attack, he's the type of player that I think is quite good for that. He moves it reasonably. He doesn't dwell on the ball too much, and his passing's quite good. But, oh dear Lord, he was so out his depth against Celtic there. That was frightening. Speaking of out their depth, Alex Cochrane. I think Alex Cocker is a very good left back, and he's probably still one of my favourite players at the club. I'd happily never see him go up against Dyson Maeda ever again. He gets tortured by him every single time, and this was no different. That was quite something. and not even just Maeda, because the second goal comes with him just not matching the run of Rio Hatai either. I was like, there were so many times like Hearts were so like stood off of Celtic the entire game. I'll save it like my Naismith rant till the end of this, but like there was just Celtic. It was just made so easy for Celtic in which to move the ball and to pass it well and to do their triangles and to look as good as they did do. The Hearts just didn't. There wasn't enough physicality for Hearts in this game. They didn't try to throw. They didn't do anywhere near enough to try to throw Celtic off their stride. They didn't get in their face. They didn't try to upset them. They didn't try to do anything really. And the last of the dreadful performances, I would say Alex Lowry as well. And this could segue into the Naismith complaint. Is that I thought Alex Lowry was. I mean, he came off the bench and scored against Killie. He came off the bench and scored against. Made the goal against County. He was very good against Hibs. Every single one of those games, he was playing in the number 10 role, because we've already established so far this season that he can't play out on the left. He doesn't really know what to do when he does it. So why was he back out on the left? Well, I know why he was back out on the left, because, and this is the only thing I think Naismith really got right with this team, was that he wanted Vargas to start up front, face pace and directness. I think Vargas had one of the better games of any of the Hearts players, so that was the right thing to do. But then when you do that, he obviously is thinking, well, I can't really drop Lowry because he's our best player in the last game, and he's been a real difference maker in the last three. But I also can't drop Lawrence Shankland, even though kind of probably does deserve to be dropped. But he's the captain, and he's the top goal scorer for last season, and at this point, we kind of treat him like he's Harry Kane. Like he just never, not only does he never get dropped, he never gets subbed off. In fairness, this game showed why you don't do that, like why you do just keep him playing all the time, because he can just produce what he just produced in this game, an excellent finish out of nowhere, having had a pretty shit game himself. But at the same time, I do think that Shankland should have a couple of games out of the team, to whether it's to recharge the batteries, recharge his mental batteries, to give him a kick up the backside, whatever it is. I think he needs to come at the starting 11 for a couple of games. Doesn't have to necessarily not appear at all. And especially with like Rangers away coming up next, that maybe be a time to just say, you take this, you sit this one out, Lawrence, and then you'll be back in the team for the semi or for the Livingston or whatever. But yeah, so the main complaint about Naismith in this one, well, two. One, again, going back to last season, and this is what I keep doing with Naismith all the time, but where was the performance against Celtic? Where was the manner in which Hearts attacked Celtic in the way that they did? And I don't just mean attacked in terms of going at them in an attacking football sense. I mean attacked them all over the park, got in their face, pressed them well, harried them, used the tight pitch of Tynecastle, played with real intensity. Where was that we saw in the game where Hearts lost 2-0 because of Cochrane's very harsh sending off not long before half-time in this game? And also, substitutions, again. Why the fuck? I mean, the game is pretty much gone by that point anyway, but why the fuck did he start the same team in the second half and not bring on Biringame and not bring on Oda, the two subs that he made after Hearts went 3-0 down? And then, funnily enough, after that, Hearts actually started to play not quite as badly as they had been doing.
There you finished, Craig?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I yes, I would agree with all of that, just not quite as passionately as you put it across there. Yeah, I know. It's like when I saw Lowry was starting, I thought, I mean, I want him to, from a Rangers fan perspective, I want him to start these games because, I want him to feel out his depth and learn, and that's obviously the frustrating thing for Hearts fans, because you don't care about that. But no. That's obviously the reason that he's on loan and he's not playing for Rangers, because he's not good enough to play in those kind of games yet. And he might show flashes now and again. I mean, he's already had the gift treatment for when he sort of sat down Rio Tati, which will make a lot of Rangers fans think he had a really good game, when obviously he didn't have anything of the sort. So he will give you wee moments, but the amount of times he actually, even when he did get on the ball, which is my probably my biggest complaint with Lowry at the moment is I don't think he's very good at getting himself on the ball. And certainly every time in a game like that, and he got bullied by Alistair Johnson badly. Any time it was a sort of big 50-50 or ball came up to Lowry and Lowry had his back to goal, he just was losing every time, I thought. But even the times towards the end of the first half, he did get on the ball a couple of times in sort of decent enough positions. He drifted into a central position on the ball and just was very wasteful. So yeah, he's that will be the frustration, because I think he probably will be better in that kind of game at the end of the season if he keeps playing every week. But he's a fair distance off being the whole package, and that's you will get he will win Hearts games this season. He already has, obviously, and he'll win Hearts more games this season, but he will also let Hearts down pretty badly, which is in a way that would be more than forgivable if he was a Hearts youth player, but he's not. So you have to weigh up. It's not quite the same as when Aberdeen had like Ryan Christie on loan, for example, because he'd already had that sort of period when he was at Cali Thistle. And he'd must have played 100 odd games for Cali Thistle before he left. So he was an experienced Premiership player at that time. Lowry's not. So you're going to get games like today where he's just sort of a duck out of water. Or a fish out of water. Ducks are already out of water.
For a small amount of time. They can't live outside the water, presumably.
No.
And what you said, like, I think you can't if you want to get anything against Celtic, you can't have a passenger in your team, and then he was a passenger today. He was not the only, as you said, poor performer for Hearts, but he was. I think the rest of the attackers involved themselves in the game. There were moments where they pressed all right. It wasn't consistent, but there was a couple of times where they kind of worried Celtic into mistakes at the back. And if you just have your wee bit of luck with that, and you've got another player joining that press, you're going to get away with that. But you mentioned Cochrane as well. He got no protection, which you need when you've got Maida. Even forgetting about Johnston coming up from fullback, like you need someone just to even be able to go 2-on-1 a bit more with Maida, which you didn't get. And Maida's crossing, as usual, let him down. But there were 3 or 4 chances where he could have created goals even before it did become 2 and 3. So it was just that all round, like, I could imagine being really quite frustrated as a Hearts fan watching that, with the caveat that Celtic did play very well, because I thought that myself. I was surprised to hear Crocker on the commentary saying, they were showing signs of clicking against Kelly last week when most of their fans were a wee bit critical of how they played against us, I thought. But today I thought they were much more the Celtic that I think Rodgers wants to see. Obviously sets them up for a big game in Europe in midweek where they're not going to be able to play the way they did against Hearts. So it will be interesting to see how all that goes. Just to touch before we finish on that penalty decision, that's one of the worst VAR non-interventions I think you'll ever see. That was just not a penalty.
Well, I think we should just end it now, because I could go on a VAR rant, but we've talked enough. Somehow, 3 games have managed to go over 50 minutes. I mean, I don't know how I didn't see this coming. just any time we've got to fill the time, we will fill that time, ladies and gentlemen. We will fill that time. But that's it for us for now. Thank you very much. If you'd like to hear more, and if you'd like to hear on the topic of VAR, then we will. Craig, are you still going to have the time to record this tonight?
Yeah, that's all good.
Right, cool. Right, so Craig and Euan watched the Sky Sports documentary, I think you would call it.
Yeah, so you don't have to, and don't.
Which aired on Sunday, and it's basically a year in VR in Scottish football, and kind of looking at the process. And so they're going to talk about that and kind of VR in general. And so that's available on the Patreon, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. That'll be on the... Actually, I'm going to put this up straight away. So that's on the £5 per month tier. The lowest tier is £2 per month if you'd like to just dip your toe in a little bit. And also, you'll probably be noticing that there have been extra podcasts been going up. That is because October has been Open the Vault month for us, where we have been putting up past Patreons up on our feed for free for people to listen to. So if you like them, again, please subscribe to the Patreon, where you can get so much more content around that. And as you'll notice as well, we're going into video. We're kind of expanding what we're doing in terms of our social media output. So you can subscribe to us on YouTube. It's just the same as everything else. Terrace at Terrace Podcast, I think it is. Let's double check that now. You can also get us. Our Instagram is active again as well after just basically we ignored that for a long time, and we're also available on Twitter as we always are. Yeah, at Terrace Podcast for YouTube. So yeah, make sure to sign up for that as well, and that'll do us. Euan, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Craig, say goodbye.
Cheerio.
And I'm Craig Fowler. Until next time, goodbye.